Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Cooley. I'm the Targeted Outreach Director at the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, also known as DFPI. Thank you for joining today's webinar. It is our April financial literacy, it's our April financial education webinar. We have a great, fantastic guest. But before we jump on, I know it's right at noon and I see people logging in right now. So let's give everyone another 2 minutes to jump in before we get started, okay? So 2 more minutes. Thank you for your patience. Okay, again, thank you for joining. My name is Cooley. I'm the Targeted Outreach Director for the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, also known as DFPI. Today's financial education webinar is on financial literacy and its importance. We have a lot of great information. Let's go ahead and get started. So first, I do have a little bit of housekeeping here. Your cameras and microphones have been turned off for this webinar. Please use the Zoom's Q&A feature to submit your questions. We do have a dedicated time at the very end of the webinar, and we do want to answer whatever questions you have. So please feel free to submit those in, and we'll get to those. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the presenters. They do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the DFPI. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. This is not legal or financial advice. And the DFPI does not assume responsibility for the completeness of the information presented in this presentation. Basically, I've gone through this presentation and reviewed it for making sure it's updated as much as possible. But as you know, as time goes on, things may change. New trends, new innovations happen, and so this is as up to date as of this presentation. If you do want more information, you could always visit our website, dfpi.ca.gov. And we also have a dedicated email inbox. So if you do have questions, you want a copy of these slides, you could always email us at outreach at dfpi.ca.gov. Okay. Moving on just quickly to talk about who the DFPI is, what is our role in California. We are the state of California's financial regulator. Our focus is on consumer financial protection. The foundation of our mission, vision, and role is to champion and uphold financial protections for all Californians. If you want more information, we have a dedicated section on our website just for consumers. It's dfpi.ca.gov/consumers. There we publish a lot of news, consumer alerts. We have a crypto tracker. We also have a list of different events that we do. So please feel free to check out that website. Okay. A little more about the DFPI. We regulate a number of different financial professionals and industries, companies, businesses in the state of California. Here's a quick list, right? So we regulate financial institutions such as banks and credit unions, non-bank lenders like payday lenders and mortgage lenders, money transmitters, securities and investment advisors, and also student loan servicers, debt collectors, and many other financial products. Again, please visit our website for more information. If you do have any issues or experience any problems with any of these professionals, licensees, please feel free to contact us and submit a complaint. We are more than happy to review the complaint and help find a solution. Okay, so April is National Financial Literacy Month. It's a great time to, take some time and learn about your finances. It is, of course, National Financial Literacy Month. There's a lot of different events happening. We actually have another financial literacy resource webinar happening later this month, and I'll share more details about that. With that, I do want to share something that my team and I have developed. It is the Financial Capability Roadmap. You know, for many people, they have a hard time gauging where they're at financially, and then, of course, where they want to be. So when I show this in my workshops, I always ask people, hey, be honest with yourself. Where are you? And more importantly, where do you want to be? And the reality of it is, here's some definitions of the roadmap, right? Kind of categories of where you may be in your financial journey. I'm not going to read through this, but I will share the slides after the presentation, so you could always go through this at your own time and your own pace. The point of this slide, right, is basically knowing and using financial literacy topics and issues can take you from anywhere in this area of the financial capability roadmap, and it could bring you to here, right? Going from financial insecurity to financial security. And it's as easy as, I'm not going to say as easy or simple, but it could take just budgeting. It could take just managing debt, building credit, or starting retirement planning. 1, 2, maybe even 3 topics can take you from being financially dependent or financially insecure to over here being financially secure and even financially independent. So first of all, thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting National Financial Literacy Month. And with that, I do want to introduce our guest speaker. Her name is Andrea Sticha. She is the research director of the Institute for Financial Decision Making at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business and the deputy academic director at the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center. We are very lucky to have her. Sticha's research is dedicated to financial literacy and well-being of households in the United States and around the world. Before joining Stanford, she was an assistant research professor at the George Washington University School of Business. She holds a PhD in finance and a Master of Science and Bachelor's of Arts in Business and Economics from the University of Basel, which is in Switzerland. So with that, I would like to introduce Andrea. Thank you so much for being here and talking about the current state of financial literacy and well-being in the United States.
Thank you so much, Ku, for this kind introduction and, of course, for the invitation to present here today. So happy Financial Literacy Month also from my side. So why is financial literacy so important? Why do we have actually an entire month dedicated to financial literacy? It's because financial decisions touch us every day, all day, and every chapter of our lives. So first slide, please. Think about, for example, the college graduates, right? They start their economic life in debt. We also have to be in charge of saving and investing for our retirement. We have access to financial instruments that are more complex than in the past. And we also face different labor markets than in the past. So we have so many important and consequential financial decisions to make over the course of our lives. So the question is, how are we handling those? And the picture on the right here answers part of this question already. Next slide, please. So on average, people spend 8 hours a week thinking about and dealing with issues and problems related to their personal finances. That's 8 hours. If you think that's an entire workday, it's a lot of time. Honestly, time that I would want to spend with my 2 young daughters. I'd rather chase them around than be chased by my money worries. But I have to say there's a silver lining. These hours can be reduced. So that time frame is much shorter with higher levels of financial literacy. So financial literacy matters, and that's exactly what I will talk about today. So let's start with how we measure financial literacy and especially what research questions inspired our data collection. Let's go to the next slide, please. So one of the questions was, do people have the knowledge of the fundamental concepts at the basis of financial decision making? We also wanted to know which personal finance topics do people know the most and the least. And last but not least, we wanted to know, do people engage in behavior conducive to financial resilience, financial well-being? So about 20 years ago, my boss, which is Professor Anna Maria Lusardi, and her colleague, Professor Olivia Mitchell from Wharton, started to measure financial literacy using 3 simple questions. And I have those 3 questions in the next slide for you. We call them the ABCs of personal finance, or also the big 3. And you see in these questions here that we have 3 questions and they cover each a distinct topic, which is really at that fundamental piece of financial decision making. So the first topic is covering interest. The second topic is covering understanding of inflation. And the third topic is about risk diversification. So let's look at the questions. The first question is, suppose you had $100 in a savings account and the interest rate was 2% per year. So after 5 years, how much do you think you would have in the account if you left the money to grow? On the right-hand side, you see the answer options. More than 102, exactly 102, or less than 102. As you see on the answer options, we are not asking the person to understand what compound interest is, because then we would have said there 110. No, we are simply interested in whether people understand the concept of interest rates. The second question tries to go at whether people understand what inflation is. So the question is, imagine that the interest rate on your savings account was 1% per year and inflation was 2% per year. So after 1 year with the money in this account, would you be able to buy more than today, exactly the same as today, or less than today? Of course, you see it is less than today, but it's really that understanding of what does inflation do with my purchasing power. And the third question is about risk diversification. So the question is, do you think the following statement is true or false? Buying a single company stock usually provides a safer return than the stock mutual fund. And this is false. So now let's see how people did in 2021. This is the latest data that I have on these big 3 in answering these 3 questions. I can tell you right away, only 29% of Americans answered all 3 questions correctly. Only 29%. I have on the next slide a graph that splits the sample by age. Thank you. So you see here, among 18 to 24-year-olds, only 11% could answer those 3 questions correctly. And among the 25 to 29-year-olds, only 14%. So now you might ask yourself, but yeah, won't they learn as they make financial decisions and then later in life they will know everything they need? Well, you're correct to a certain degree. You see that the bars are increasing with age, but it doesn't increase enough. Older generations have only slightly higher financial literacy, but they have been making important and consequential financial decisions all along without being well prepared. And among those decisions is how to manage retirement savings. So let's have a closer look at those close to retirement, those 55 to 59-year-olds. Among them, only 35%, so around a third, could correctly answer these big 3 questions that we just looked at. So we see there is huge potential for improvement. Now, 9 years ago, we extended the big 3, and together with the TI Institute, we developed 28 questions to measure financial literacy. So from the 3, we went to 28 to just have a nuanced and more comprehensive picture. So next slide, please. We also wanted to have the data collected on an annual basis. So we have now an annual measure of personal finance knowledge, and that is knowledge that enables sound financial decision-making and effective management of personal finances. And the questions that we designed relate to common financial situations that individuals encounter. And I will show you a question in a minute. We also have additional information on financial well-being indicators. And the whole sample, or the data, is representative of the US population. And we have around 3,500 respondents that are age 18 plus. Now, as I said, we are now in year 9 of this yearly measure. So let's have a look at what we have on the next slide. This is what we found on our website. If you're interested in our data, so we have yearly reports, and we have now 9 years. And you see there is, for 2025, there's still a placeholder. So I'll give you today a little preview of the 2025 findings. But I have to say the data was just collected in January, and I got them not that long ago and have been looking at the new findings ever since. So the full report will be released in May, so please stay tuned. But I'm delighted to be able to give you a little sneak peek today of the most updated and current findings. But first, before we dive right in, let's have a look why it is so unique, why the 28 questions are so unique. Let's go to the next slide, please. They're unique because, as I said, there are 28 questions to begin with, but also they cover 8 functional areas of personal finances. And these 8 functional areas are actually aligned with the national standards for financial literacy in the US. And these topics, they go really from earning, saving, consuming, investing, borrowing, insuring, comprehending risk, and also go to information sources. So you see, it's a really comprehensive measure that we designed here. So let's go to the next slide, because I will want to show you a sample question. This question is a little different because we really wanted to align it with financial situations that people encounter. So they're more scenario-based. And one of the questions is, Anna saves $500 each year for 10 years and then stops saving additional money. At the same time, Charlie saves nothing for 10 years, but then receives a $5,000 gift, which he decides to save. So I think both at the same amount. If both Anna and Charlie earn a 5% return each year, who will have more money in savings after 20 years? So you see here, the answer options are Anna and Charlie will have the same amount. You see 51% were correct. It's Anna, because she started saving much earlier. And that's exactly the understanding of compound interest, that this is adding up over the years. So 51% got it right. But important to note here is also that there are 22% who answered with, I don't know. So this finding might reflect an opportunity because they know that they don't know. So that respondent self-awareness about their lack of knowledge could be leveraged to increase their engagement in financial education programs. So now let's see how well people did on that 28-question quiz. Next slide, please. So on average, you can see that people could correctly answer only about 50% of those PFIN index questions, of those 28 questions. So here we read the statistics a little differently. So the number you have there in the graph is the average of questions answered correctly. So that means the 50% that people on average could only answer half of the questions, like 14 out of 28 questions. So no matter how you look at this, in my course, this is a failing grade. And this is troubling, of course, but there's something else that actually adds to this shortfall, which is, as you look at this graph, this low rate is stuck. It doesn't budge. Even over those 9 years, it has been always around the 50% mark. But even more so, that 50% grade that we are looking at here, that failing grade, if you will, is the average. So there are specific groups of the population that have much deeper shortfalls in their financial knowledge. And these groups are the young, underserved racial and ethnic groups, and women. And I'd like to look into the findings of these groups next. So let's start with the young. Next slide, please. So we have here the financial knowledge across age groups. And we have, again, the very young. You can see among those 18 to 29-year-olds, only 39% of the PFIN index questions were answered correctly among the young. And we see among the older, those 60 plus, yes, we see the same pattern. Financial literacy increases with age, but still it's not increasing fast enough. Because even among those 60 plus, the older, they have only slightly more, they could only slightly answer more than half of the questions correctly. So only a little bit more than the 14 questions correctly, which is troubling because they, as I said, they have made so many financial decisions and consequential decisions already at that time. Now let's have a look also at the next slide among racial and ethnic groups. So among Black and Hispanic residents in the US, we got correct answers only about a third of the time. And this is far below the average of the 50% of the population as a whole. And this is adding to the fact that many already face greater economic challenges. So this is a very important issue, and we all need to put our hands together and find solutions for a more equitable future. There's also a financial literacy gender gap, and it is significant. And I will show this on the next slide. Perfect. So women correctly answered only 45% of the questions, compared to 53% among men. So that's an 8 percentage point gender gap. That leaves women at a disadvantage, and one that adds to the other already existing challenges that women face. For example, women tend to live longer than men, so they have to make their money stretch over more years. But also women tend to start their careers or start with less money because of wage disparity or because of interruptions of their careers for childcare or elder care. But there's one interesting finding here as well that we see. So women are more likely to answer with "I don't know" to our money-related questions. So that should suggest that it is a lack of confidence rather than a lack of knowledge that may partially influence their financial literacy scores. So what does that mean for designing programs? This is important to think about because it may mean that we need to tailor our financial tools and education in a different way for women. So now let's turn to see which topics people understand the most and the least. Next slide, please. So at the very top, you see here all the 8 topics that we talked about that are covered by the 28 questions in the PFIN index, from borrowing to comprehending risk. Borrowing at the very top and understanding debt is what people know the best. So around 60%, 59% of the questions were answered correctly in that functional area or in that topic, which isn't very surprising if you think that many of us have to deal with debt in the form of student loans from a young age on. On the other end of the spectrum, however, you see comprehending risk. So over the past 9 years, we have learned that comprehending risk is an area where financial literacy is particularly low. Only 1 out of 3 questions assessing Americans' understanding of uncertainty and risk are answered correctly in the PFIN. So only 36% of the questions were answered correctly. And that's something, so that ranking has actually been stable across all 9 years. So it hasn't really changed much. And comprehending risk has always been the topic that people understand the least. So, but risk, if you think, is interwoven in many financial decisions we tackle over the course of our lives, from the way we manage financial emergencies to how we plan for retirement. So this lack of risk comprehension is really worrisome and needs to be addressed with targeted financial education programs. And I will talk a little bit or summarize later a little bit more on that. But talking about financial decisions, so let's use this as a transition to see how people manage these decisions and how they do money management. So please go to the next slide. Thank you. So that's also in 2025. 28% of US adults are financially fragile. So that means they're unable to cope with a $2,000 financial shock within 30 days. And we here with the question, it's an interesting question. We ask, how confident are you that you could come up with $2,000 if an unexpected need arose within the next 30 days? So we leave it open how people cope with the $2,000. So we leave it, and we also, we don't expect people to have the $2,000 in their bank account. We leave it open and say you have 30 days to come up with. And we actually did focus groups around this question. And it was very interesting that a lot of people told us, you know what, if I have 30 days, I will work more. I will actually sell something that I have. So that was the intention. And also I can tap into my family and friends and have them help out with that financial emergency. So we wanted intentionally with that question, leave it open with the 30-day time frame to how people can cope. 28% still said that they're unable to cope with that $2,000 financial shock within the 30 days. Now, you also see that 33%, around a third, lack emergency savings. And what we ask there is we ask whether they have non-retirement savings, so savings aside from their retirement from their 401k, IRA accounts, to cover 1 month of living expenses. Just 1 month of living expenses, and that was asked to the it was asked to the non-retirees. What I have here. So 33% said that they don't have emergency savings aside that would cover 1 month of living expenses. Now you see on the top right, 28% said that they're debt constrained. And what does that mean? We ask whether the debt and debt payment prevent them from adequately addressing other financial priorities. That's how we define them, being debt constrained. So we didn't ask, so in all these surveys, we never ask how much money they have in debt. So it's not about money, it's about what the outcome is. Whether money, as here, whether money would prevent them from adequately addressing other financial priorities. So not wants, but actually needs in their budget. And that's 28% said that they're debt constrained. The last number that I have here is that 58% said, I have not planned for retirement. So now this is not about savings because some people might not be able to save. But we have here, we ask here whether they have figured out how much they would need to save for retirement, whether they have actually just tried to figure out how much they will need once they retire. And 58% among US adults, entire population, entire age group said they have no plan for retirement. Now, let's see how this all is connected to financial literacy. Next slide, please. And I think this is, in my regard, the most important finding of all, because it really shows how strongly linked financial literacy is with financial well-being. So our data shows that in the short run, individuals with greater financial literacy are better prepared to weather financial shocks and have emergency savings. So on the very left here, the red colors, the dark red numbers, are those that with low financial literacy. So those who could only answer correctly up to 7 questions of the 28 PFIN index questions. So only between 0 and 7 questions. On the far right, you see those with high financial literacy, those who could correctly answer 22 to 28 questions of the PFIN index. So basically all of them, or close to all of them. So now what we look when we compare these two numbers. So on the left-hand side, we see 34% of those with low financial literacy can cope. Now I changed here. So we are looking at the positive outcome. So 34% can cope with a mid-sized financial shock of $2,000 within the next month. So 34% would actually be able to cope with that $2,000 shock. Among those with low financial literacy. Now, among those with high financial literacy, it's actually 79% who could cope with that mid-sized financial shock. Now let's look at the emergency savings. Among those with low financial literacy, 26% have non-retirement savings, like emergency savings, sufficient to cover 1 month of living expenses if needed. 26% among those with low financial literacy. Among those with high financial literacy, it's 83% that said, yes, I have emergency savings that could cover 1 month of living expenses. Now on the debt, the next row is the debt. 45% among those with low financial literacy said that they're debt constrained, so that they report that debt payments prevent them from adequately addressing other financial priorities. Among those with high financial literacy, it's 50, oh, sorry, forget what I said. Important there is the not. They reported that debt and debt payments did not prevent them from adequately addressing other financial priorities. We are here on the positive side. So 45% among the low financial literacy said they're not debt constrained, and 56% among those with high financial literacy said they are not debt constrained. So you can see from these numbers that that is something people struggle more with, independent of financial literacy levels, but still there is a gap between those with low financial literacy compared to those with higher financial literacy rates. Now, last but not least, we have planning for the long term. And we see here that those who answer more of the PFIN index questions correctly are also more likely to plan for retirement, or specifically here among those with low financial literacy, 19% have been planning for retirement by figuring out how much they need to save. And among those with high financial literacy, it's actually 62%. This is a huge gap. And that's why financial literacy, in my view, is so important. That's why we have an entire month dedicated to financial literacy. So let's sum it up. Please go to the next slide. So those who are financially literate, you see here, are better prepared to cope with shocks, are more likely to save for emergencies, are better at managing debt, and are more likely to plan for retirement. And these are all indicators of financial resilience and ultimately well-being. So now you might wonder how these 8 hours of worry that I talked about at the very beginning, what would change if we added financial literacy to the equation? So let's go to the next slide, please. So you see here, low financial literacy on the very left, high financial literacy on the very right. So those on the left could answer up to 7 questions correctly, 0 to 7. On the very right, they could answer 22 to 28 questions correctly. The red bars are the average hours per week people spend worrying and thinking about and dealing with issues and problems related to their personal finances. And the gray bars are the hours that occur at work. Because the follow-up question was, how many hours occur at work? So let's have a look. Those with high financial literacy, those who could answer 22 to 28 questions correctly, spend much less time, only about 4 hours per week. Those with low financial literacy, those who could answered 7 or fewer questions correctly, spend as many as 12 hours per week. And as you can see on the gray bars already, some of these hours overlap with the workplace. So how are employers affected by the time individuals spend? So remember, people who spend 12 hours a week, those with low financial literacy, and they're distressed about their finances, about 12 hours per week, 7 of those 12 hours occur at the workplace. That's a lot of time, if you think. It's almost an entire workday. Now think about people who have higher financial literacy, those that think about their finances roughly 4 hours a day, 4 hours a week. Among them, only 1 overlaps with the work time. So I cannot stress enough, financial literacy matters. And that's another measure of how costly financial illiteracy is, because it matters in far-reaching and life-changing ways for us, because it's a lot of time that we spend. So let's recap on the next slide, please. So we need to improve levels of financial literacy, because the levels of knowledge, what we have seen, is critically low. So we need to invest in financial education. We have also seen that there are gaps across demographic subpopulations. So one size does not fit all. So we need to tailor our programs to the target audiences. Also, we have seen some topics are particularly complex, and our data shows that risk and risk diversification is clearly a topic that we need to pay attention to. And then lastly, we saw that cost of financial literacy can be high because it really affects behavior and well-being, and also our time. So now, what can be done? So what are the implications for policy and programs? Next slide, please. So we need policy and programs directed to address that gap. And among them could be promoting digital and financial literacy to foster financial inclusion. So fintech can play a role, and fintech and financial education can actually go hand in hand and complement each other. Then it's also essential that we start in school to empower young people with knowledge before they actually make life-changing financial decisions. Because in that way, they begin their lives and careers on a strong footing. So let's make financial education mandatory in school. And a shout out here to California for adding financial literacy as a requirement to graduate high school, and you did that mid last year. So this is really great progress, and I'm very happy about that. But we cannot stop there, because we also need to provide access to continued learning through, for example, financial wellness programs at the workplace and in local communities. Financial education is a lifelong journey, if you think, because financial decisions change over the course of our lives. So we have to provide access to financial education programs and resources along the way, so people have the opportunity to learn when they actually have to make the decision. Then also, we need to design programs targeting groups with particularly low financial literacy. And it is also essential to boost both knowledge and confidence. If you think back to the example with the women answering more financial literacy questions with don't know, that means we need to address this lower confidence through programs that are empowering. Now, we need to rely on rigorous data and measurement and measure progress. Now, of course, you might think, she is a data geek. Of course, she had to add this. Yes, that's very true. I love my data, but nevertheless, data is important to inform the design of our programs, to make them targeted, and to have proof that the programs work and that they're actually effective. And this data will also help with raising awareness and engaging people to join the programs and use the resources. And it will also help with making a case to fund these programs and resources. So in my view, data was very important in all that as well. So let me conclude, and this is my last slide. So we need to teach and provide wide access to financial knowledge and skills so that people can be more financially resilient and financially secure. Because in my view, financial literacy is like water in an ecosystem. It is needed to grow and flourish. So let's all be financial literacy ambassadors and make this happen. So thank you so much. And the last slide, just quickly, before I turn over to Q, this is our website. There is a lot more of that information. All the reports on the PFIN index are on there. We have resources for teaching, and we also have our events and policy and programs you see there. So there's a lot going on. Please visit us or shoot me an email, and I'm happy to share the resources with you as well. So thank you so much for your attention. Back to you, Ku.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Sticha. This was a fantastic presentation. We have a lot of, oh, by the way, sorry, let me continue moving forward. So here we are at the Q&A session. We do have a lot of questions that have been submitted to us. And as a reminder, if you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to put it into the Zoom's Q&A feature. We will get to it as soon as we can. With that, Dr. Sticha, let's go ahead and start answering some questions. So first one is pretty easy. Can I get a copy of this webinar and slides? Answer is yes. We are recording this webinar and we will publish it to our YouTube channel. So it'll be available later today. I'm also going to be emailing everyone who registered for this registered for this webinar, a link to the webinar recording, as well as a copy of the slides. So look out for that later today. Thank you for that question. Next question, what are the top things that users can do to become financially secure? I know you've talked a little bit about this.
Yeah, it is. That's a really good question. So it's I mean, of course, I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm the researcher. So, and personal finances, I have to say, it is in the name. Personal finances are very personal. So there is not a one size fits all solution. But what I have like 10 personal finance recommendations, and this is starts with setting objectives, setting goals, having a budget and revisiting that budget and really looking whether I'm still in what I've budgeted here, looking whether it is aligned with what I'm doing and following what I've planned out. Then save to build a buffer. So have that, even if it's just a little bit, right? We can start with $5 on the side, but it will grow over time. It's just that being consistent, even if it's just a small amount, but being consistent and doing it every month when the paycheck comes in, that just adds up. And we might not realize it that much, but over time, when there is a financial shock, then it adds up. And we have that buffer then, and even if it's just a little cushion, but still, it will help. Then manage your debt. That's really just looking at it. Sometimes I have to say it is tempting to not look, but that's not the way to go. Then maximize FICO score. Save for the long term. Compound interest with my students, I always say, this is magic. They look and feel like, yes. So we have to go through a spreadsheet and I show them that it actually adds up. If I save and start early on, this is the biggest asset, the biggest equity, basically, what young students, what young adults have, that they have the time. That they have time, and actually just a little bit sums up over time with all that interest that compounds on the interest. So that's really important. Save for the long time and start early. Then take advantage of employer benefits, talking about retirement savings. So if there is a 401k plan that the employer provides, then looking at it and taking advantage of the employer benefits. Insuring yourself against major risks is another good recommendation, I think, if possible. So yeah, that's just a little bit that I can say to this. Thank you.
It's really good. Thank you, Dr. Sticha. I completely agree. There is, and I get this question a lot whenever I go out and I do my workshops or when I talk to individuals who come up to my resource table. I always say, yes, there is no silver bullet. There is no one size fits all. I do always recommend people start a budget if they're not budgeting already, because you got to know what money you're bringing in, what money is going out, where's it going out to, and that's the best place to start. Just knowledge is so important. But yes, just like you say, Andrea, lots of other fantastic topics that again help build wealth and to learn more about. So thank you for that question. That was really great. Next question. I don't think I can financially educate myself to become wealthy. I'm going to add a little comment here because I've this when I do my workshop, sometimes I get a little bit of this feedback, and then Andre, I'm going to let you respond as well. Yes, I agree that you can't. Financial literacy is not the one save all thing, but I would say it's about half the battle. If you are ready, if you learn and know about the topics, if you understand, if you're budgeting, if you're doing the right things, I think you're preparing yourself for success. And yes, I do get a lot of people who come in and to my workshops and they feel like education is not enough. But what I tell them is it is what you can do, right? Sometimes you can't control economic factors outside, right? Economic opportunities around you, how much you make, that kind of thing. But what you can do is control what you spend your money on and how you budget your money. And I think financially, financial literacy, financial education is going to help you understand those better. So Andre, would you like to respond?
No, I totally second this. So thank you so much. This is very, very well said. So it is not a cure-all. This is not. I mean, yes, if the means are not there, I mean, it is difficult. Oh, I totally understand. But as you said, it is a way to make informed decisions and not lose additional money by not just simply not knowing, right? And I think knowledge is really that tool that allows us to make those informed decisions.
Awesome. Thank you. This is a great question. Okay, next question. I run a nonprofit and I struggle to get my community to embrace financial education. What would you suggest for me to introduce people to it? Statistics don't seem to motivate individuals.
Yeah, that's a really good. Yeah, exactly. Maybe not everybody is so receptive to data as I am. So I totally get that. What we do actually when we deploy new programs is to do a survey to really first assess what are people's struggles, what are people's worries, where are people at financially, with what questions do they have, so really that we can address where they're at right now and what would work, what would help them best. So I think then a lot is about communication, of course, then, right? And communicating to their needs and to what they're interested in or what they're struggling with. And so there is, again, it's, I'm sorry to say it, to be a broken record here, but there's no one size fits all again. It's really about understanding who's your audience, who's your community, and then trying to build that into the communication. And we start with a simple survey, surveying people, doing in-depth interviews. Like, I mean, it sounds also researchy, but really talking to people in the end. That's the key. How I start and that helps a lot with engaging, because then you meet them where they're at.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. I'll add one thing here, and it's because I do a lot of these workshops.
Yeah.
You're going to get people who come in, and again, no matter what you say, they're not going to be interested, right? They're looking for that one-shot solution. And what I tell them, what I do is I always use stories, right? I use my own personal story about financial literacy and how it helped me. And also, you help. I would say find those success stories and use those to help sell. I don't want to say sell, but use those to help motivate other people, right? Because it could just, again, it could be that one small thing. Just budgeting takes someone from being financially insecure to being financially secure, right? And use that as a story that you can help motivate others. But yeah, great question. Thank you so much. A lot. Oh, you know what? I'm going to move the slides forward one, so we have enough time to make sure to promote it. So just as a reminder, later this month, it's about 2 Wednesdays from now, we have the DFPI's Financial Literacy Month resource webinar. We're going to have a great panel talking about psychology of saving. We also are going to be highlighting a lot of different resources that can help you. So there's a link to the webinar right there. Please feel free to register for it. Also, we have a newsletter. Subscribe to us. We have our YouTube channel, which this will be published on. I'm going to continue to do the Q&A. I just want to make sure I don't forget this slide. Okay, next question. This data and analysis is great. Is there any data sources you would recommend for specific regions or demographics?
That's a good question. So yes, of course, with only 3,500 observations, we can do like national. We have a nationally representative sample, but we cannot slice and dice and go on a regional level or state level even. There is the National Financial Capabilities Study, which is a project of the FINRA Investor Education Foundation. This is data that's freely available on their website. And that's actually the data I showed you at the very beginning when I had the graph over the years with the big three. So it doesn't have the 28 questions. This is also proprietary data, I have to say. We have a lot of stats in our slide in our reports that are available on our website. But that study, and we call it NFCS, the National Financial Capability Study, has actually 28,000 observations, and they do it also on a state level. So not really regional, but you can look and dive into one state because there are enough observations. What we do in the PFIN index, the data that I presented today, we oversampled groups. So we oversampled ones, the young millennials. They're not that young anymore. We have Gen Z now, but that was a couple of years ago. But we also oversampled Black Americans. We oversampled Hispanics. So we have demographic reports also on our website that dive a little bit deeper into different subpopulations. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute, Q.
Yeah, sorry. Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have a little bit of time left. I'm going to try to fly through some of these questions, make sure I get all of them. And here's an interesting one. How long would it take to become financially literate? Where can I get started?
That's I think you can get started right now. So that's how long does it take? That's a really good question. So I think it depends. I mean, what we see in our research, let me back up with my research that I do. We see that when we go back to school, school courses, we see that a workshop that's only half a day or so isn't as effective because we cannot really work with the concepts, with the content. So we need to have a little bit more time. So we always recommend, like, the gold standard is a semester-long course. But of course, that's like a couple hours a week, right? It's not. So if you say, I want to dive right in, I mean, you can cover a lot. But I'm just saying, like, there are several topics that are important, and I covered here the 8 topics that are in the national standards. It also depends where you're at. That's another. What's your starting point, and then go and also do some exercises, right? Or go and build your own budget. So it is sort of like practicing and going to the gym and practicing that budgeting muscle and seeing, okay, really having then also that perspective and see, okay, I know what my budget is, have it done, and then I know while I go through the month, oh, actually, I have money left over for that Starbucks coffee, right? So I can treat myself. Or another month you will then say, oh no, actually, I know I already had that big expense, so I have to be a little bit more careful. So I think it's really also that muscle that you practice. That's how I see it. But Q, maybe you have another
Yeah,
take on
no,
this.
you hit it right on the nose. I completely agree. And the one thing I would add is you had a slide on this too, Dr. Sticha. It is a lifelong journey. You're being financially literate is a lifelong process. It's great to start, and I would highly recommend to get started immediately. And I would not try to just jump too hard into it. I'd say ease your way in. And yeah, it's definitely a lifelong. Again, like Dr. Stitcher was saying, it's about consistency, right? Continuing to do it a little bit at a time, and you'll see the difference as you go on. Okay, quickly, I'll answer this question. It's a great question about scams. Where does scam prevention fall in relation to financial literacy? So one of the topics in being financially literate, and by the way, when you become more financially literate, you will be able to identify scams a little better. In my opinion, I think. Uh, and that's, of course, anyone could fall prey to scams. Scams are getting more advanced and scarier.
Mhm.
Um, but it is good to understand a lot about the different types of fraud and scams out there. And being more financially literate, you'll be able to understand and see those red flags, right? So great question. Dr. Stitcher, did you want to add anything on that?
No, that's yeah, exactly. It's just being aware and then knowing also what questions to ask, right? If you know a little bit more about the topic, then you know, oh, no, actually that sounds a little fishy. Maybe that's not the right, and then asking questions.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, this is kind of another question that we answered. How can I get started? What programs do you recommend? Let me plug one here because
Mhm.
we actually have the DFPI has a learning platform which has a number of different financial literacy topics and modules. So things on like budgeting, investing, building credit, that kind of a thing. I'm going to put a link into the chat. But yeah, Dr. Sitcha, what else? What else? Other programs would you recommend for people to get started?
No, I think there are. I think there are lots of interesting programs out there. Also, like some that are based on short videos. So it really depends also how you would like to learn, right? Some rather want to read about it. Other rather want to watch videos. The important thing is really to check the source. To check the source from whom is it coming? Is it like is it from somebody that's more of a finfluencer and might not know enough and also what I'm always a little worried about if somebody provides financial advice, because as I said, unless it is a financial advisor that looks at your particular situation, but just like telling this is how you do it and here are the 10 steps, that might not be the best solution for your specific situation.
Yeah, really good. It's a lot of good points. Thank you, Andrea. Okay, and thank you for the question. It's a great question. Here's another good question. I'm almost retired. Is it too late for me to become financially educated or literate?
No, of course not. No, there are so many decisions to make. And up until now, we are thinking about accumulating wealth, right? Up until like retirement, it's all about saving, saving, saving for retirement. But then it doesn't stop. The financial decisions in retirement do not stop. And it's actually a very important decision. It's about the decumulation. So how now I'm actually there. So now there's no income anymore. So now I have to spread the money that I have over uh, over over a time period that's uncertain, right? So it is an extremely difficult question, I have to say, and decision to make. So yes, no, there's no time to to not invest in financial literacy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And in fact, I get this question a little, quite a bit when I talk to senior retirees, older adults, um, and I often tell them it's actually much more important because number one, you are actually in that age group and that demographic. You're highly targeted by scams and fraud, so you want to be hyper vigilant and wear those red flags. And of course, you're also going to be living on a limited income, so you want to be much more um, aware and financially literate. So great question. Thank you, Dr. Sisha, for the response. Here's another one. I'd like to share these slides. Can I get a copy? The answer is yes. Again, I will be emailing everyone a follow-up email, which will include the slides and a link to this webinar recording. Thank you very much. Also, he asked, I have a few people that I think should be better financially educated. How can I help them? Dr. Sitcha?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that talking about the topic, and because we see in also through my research, I see that almost sometimes personal finance or a lot of times it's actually seen as a taboo, so people don't want to talk about it, especially also when they're in trouble, so when they are in debt and feel like it's overwhelming. So just like talking, being there and discussing this discussing the topic, not just like with family and friends. I mean, with family and friends. We also have resources on our website that how to talk with your kids about personal finances. So that's another great way to also get that hurdle down of it is a taboo. We don't talk about our financial struggles. It's actually very, very good to talk about it and find solutions. And also for somebody in troubles to figure out, I'm not alone. There are actually other people out there, and that's very empowering to actually look at the financial situation and find solutions.
Yeah, great question. I'll add one more here, and great response. Thank you, Dr. Sticha. I will say, be a great example, right? If you're think you're financially literate or you know a lot, be a great example, and they're going to come to you and say, "Hey, how did you invest? Or how are you using your money? Or how are you budgeting?" And if you're being a great example, they'll. I think it's a really easy way for them to want to come and learn from you. So, great, thank you. Here's a great question. Sometimes I feel overstressed with my finances and I don't know what to do, how to get started.
Yeah, I totally get it. How I would approach this and how I do it myself is do it in slices. Don't try to tackle everything at once. Try just piece by piece and work your way through because it is daunting and it is a lot to learn and it is frustrating and also worrisome. So let's do it in pieces, but be consistent, stay on it, and find solutions. That would be my take.
Yep, I completely agree. And I think as you see, as Dr. Sidger was saying, as you start a little bit at a time, you're going to start seeing a bigger picture and you're going to start knowing more. And that I think it's going to start snowballing and clicking for you a lot more. So thank you. Great question. Great response. Will this talk be available online? Yes. Again, we are recording. We'll publish to our YouTube channel, and everyone who registers will get a link to it. And is the April 23rd webinar open to the public? The answer is yes. Anyone and everyone could register for our Financial Literacy Month resource webinar. Please feel free to register, share it with others. And with that, looks like we're all out of time and all out of questions. Again, I want to say very big thank you to Dr. Andrea Sticha from she is the research director for the Initiative for Financial Decision Making at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business. And thank you for joining our webinar. Please take care of yourself and each other. I will see you at the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you.